but there were 11 other teams that went under 500, including Kansas City and Chicago. And I think the only way this has some sort of validity is because of the depth. It speaks to your depth. John, do you think it means anything?
Well, if it had just been 3 or 4 years that they're talking about, then no. But this is 11 years.
Seems like a bit more like this is a size. It's a sample size.
It's a good sample size, and I don't necessarily know that it means in regards to your depth, but I'll look at it from a different perspective. It means going into the season, you at least have developed a little confidence that you can score points, that you can stop somebody, and that you can come out at the end of the game as a winner. If you go 0-4 and you're still working for that first victory, whether it's a preseason game or not, you still have this doubt in your head, when's it going to happen? When is against Arizona, is that going to be our first victory? There is a measure of confidence that can be built in the preseason simply by winning the game.
You honestly, you played. You had 11 years in the league.
Yeah.
You honestly got something out of the scoreboard at the end of a preseason game.
There's a feeling when you walk off the field and you lost. All right, you get into the locker room. Whether you played or not, how much the starters played, that means absolutely nothing in regards to you walk off and you feel, we lost. We're all competitive. And when you lose, it weighs on you. Well, you know what? Next week, the second week, we're going to play a little bit more, we'll get a win. Or the third week, we're going to play the most, and we're going to get a win. Every time you walk off the field, losing, I don't want to say as a loser because that's a little dramatic for the preseason, but every time you walk off the field having lost a game, it wears on you a little bit. And then you start the regular season and you're hopeful that you can turn things around, that the preseason didn't mean anything, but it's still in the back of your mind. We did not win. You
realize that's, I think, pretty hard for the average fan to relate to because you were a starter. If you play 2-3 series and you're winning when you leave the field or you're tied when you leave the field, and then the backups are the guys that have nothing to do with the organization come in and blow the game for you, that's hard for me and I think others to grasp that actually mattered to John Jansen when you were standing on the sidelines as a player. You know how you felt, but
you're playing a game. The goal of the game is to win, and if you don't win, if you're 0-4, that will be in the back of your mind that we did not win a preseason game. So that'll add a little pressure to the first week. And if you don't win that week, it adds a little bit more pressure. You start out behind the 8 ball. And if you can get a win, just a win in the preseason, it takes all that pressure away. Hey, at least they did it once. Whether it was the backups, whether it was guys that are not going to be on the roster, makes no difference. The fact of the matter is you were 0-4, and that will weigh on you going into the regular season. When is that first win going to happen? Because when you look at their schedule, they start off with Arizona. Yeah, that should be a win. And we're kind of banking on that being a win. But then you've got the Chargers. You've got, division rivals. It doesn't get any easier for 6 weeks.
So here's feedback coming in via Twitter because we tweeted this out. And immediately we got bombarded with, guys, the Lions went 4-0 in the preseason and then 0-16 in the regular. We're fully aware of that. But this isn't just a Lion-specific stat. It applies to everyone in the NFL, including 2 teams that are pretty popular picks to be Super Bowl contenders, and that's Chicago, Kansas City. But the question is, the research again is the last 11 years, a Super Bowl champ went 500 or better in the preseason. Does this actually matter? Does that stat, is it truly indicative of something that matters? Brian sends us the following tweet. I think it matters some winning in the preseason. It shows your team has depth that's needed for a great team. From Michael, Super Bowl winners almost always have depth on their roster. It's a game of injuries, and depth matters a lot. The exhibition games are primarily backup players. No coincidence here. The Lions may have a bit more talent, but in no way do they go deep. Eliminated. From Matthew, it's more coincidence than anything, though most of the teams you listed aren't contenders. What about all time? Does the stat hold true? I don't know, Matthew. I mean, I'm just going off what ESPN reported. It's the last 11 years, which seems like a pretty sizable sample size. And it was a great quote. I can't remember which president said it. It was one of the Eisenhower or Truman said, things are more like they are now than they've ever been before. But It's a great quote.
Yeah, it is.
But things are more like they are now than they've ever been before. In the last 11 years, I think we've seen preseason trends change a lot. Like, I think starters play less now than they ever have before.
And I've said that all preseason this year. I think this year was a monumental leap into guys not playing. We saw Aaron Rodgers didn't even dress, didn't play. Matt Stafford here at home didn't play until the third preseason game. And yeah, the guys are playing less in the preseason than they ever have before. But and in terms of depth, of all-around depth, I do think that plays a matter into how you can win a preseason game. Look at New England, the first preseason game that we had. Tom Brady played did he even play in that game? I can't remember.
He did not.
He did not.
No,
but
I don't think so.
But when you look at the depth that they had, their 2s and 3s against the 2s and 3s of Detroit, they were far superior, and which leads you to believe that if they run into issues other than the quarterback position, if they run into issues at offensive line, which they are trying to pick up some offensive linemen, if they run into issues anywhere, they have a pool of talent to pull from. Whereas I don't think the Detroit Lions have that same pool of talent to pull from. And over the course of a football season, 16 games, whether it's offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, tight end, doesn't matter. You're going to have to eventually pull from a certain pool of talent. And if you don't have that to be able to fall back on, you will and eventually be inept at one position. Kerryon Johnson last year gets hurt, and what's behind him is not as good.
It was Eisenhower, by the way.
Eisenhower
said things are more like they are now than they've ever been before. 248-539-9797. Marlo's in Detroit, and he's on 97 on a ticket. Hi, Marlo.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Good.
Great.
See, I think both of you guys are making the same point. You're speaking about two sides of the same coin. Bill, you're absolutely right. You know, it has to do, it shows your depth. It shows that next man up cliche that they throw up is not a cliche. You can actually play like that. And then John's right also, to go into the season with some kind of confidence, saying in the back of your mind, yeah, we can get this done. And it doesn't matter if it's the third stringers in there who lose the game for you, or if, you know, your whole team just didn't play right. When you guys have gone through training camp, have gone through OTAs and all of that together, you are brothers. We are brothers. My win is your win. My loss is your loss. So I think you guys are speaking about two sides of the same coin.
Marlo, thank you for the phone call. And look, I'm very, everybody says it and everybody gets it, and I think everybody agrees. The results don't matter. But I'm rethinking sort of what the results speak to, because starters are playing less, depth guys get all the snaps, and if your depth guys are better than their depth guys, when the inevitable happens, when Frank Ragnow goes down and Jared Davis goes down, or, I don't know, Trent Green goes down, do you have the depth to absorb that? Oftentimes tells you who's left standing at the end. In fact, almost too much, right? I mean, honestly, in football, it's almost too much. It's such a game of attrition and injuries are you're either really fortunate or really unlucky. Back in 97, when you guys won the national championship, did you guys start the same five on the offensive line every game?
We did.
Every game.
Yeah, and you know, there were times where we had to shuffle guys around in game.
Yep. But
for the starts, and we had guys playing banged up. You know, Hutch had a shoulder at the time. I can't remember what Backus had, but we had five guys start the entire season, and that makes a big difference. And you're fortunate. We lost that year, and it was a big factor defensively, and we had one of the best defenses Michigan's ever seen. But Eric Mays, captain, was lost before the regular season started to a knee injury. And you have to have the ability to have somebody step in and play extremely well. If you don't, now all of a sudden you're playing with a hole offensively or defensively that you've got to try and cover up. And if you're trying to cover up something, now all of a sudden a strength of yours that you can't rely on anymore becomes just average because you're trying to cover something else up. And you can't play your strengths.
Let's go to Richard in Detroit. You're next. Hi, Richard.
Hey, how's it going, guys? I just was wondering about the Lions. You know, every year we go into talking about the Lions, we always say maybe playoff or bust. When will we ever get that team that's we can say, well, this year we should win the championship or it's a bust. You know, we brought in Quinn and them. They brought in their philosophy. And to me, it don't look like that philosophy working. It seems like you're trying to get certain players. It's a football game. Get football players to play football. Sometimes you got to excuse some behavior, not all behavior, but some, and just get football players.
So you don't like finding guys that quote unquote fit your scheme. You just want the best, and then
in
fit
the long
the
run,
scheme
it's
around
still
them.
football. It's scoring the ball and stopping the ball. Your scheme, your defensive scheme might be good for certain teams, but all right, look at our division. Is our scheme set to stop Chicago, Green Bay, or Minnesota from scoring? Did we build a defense with what they do? Because they all of them run almost the same type of offense. But is our scheme designed to stop them? Or it's just a scheme that, if we put the scheme out there, it'll control.
Well, I'll tell you what they'd say. They'd say the scheme is designed to stop everybody.
I'm just a believer in football is football. Let's just get the best football players you can get, good scouting, scout the best football players you can, put them on your team. Let's build that team where we can go into the year saying this is a championship or bust. Not, we'll be 8-8. We might make the playoffs. You know, them years should be gone. I mean,
well,
it's
Richard,
just time for the Lions. You know, I mean, I don't know what to say about them.
Well, you said a lot.
Yeah, I do think that actually that this defense is built to they're getting close to being able to stop just about anybody. Are they a top 5 defense? I don't think so. Maybe if we attract a stud defensive lineman from Houston, we might.
You really want the Clowney thing, huh?
No, I'm just throwing that out there.
There's been a major effort to improve the front seven. Mm-hmm. And you'd think we'd be able to see results from that coming up. Anyway, 248-539-9797.